A number of folks in Mississippi are concerned regarding a new Senate bill that could very well lead to the closure of several HBCUs. State Senator John Polk believes the state's 8 public universities are too costly, and closing 3 will save the state millions. He's filed a bill called SB 2726. If it becomes law, it will force the Board of Trustees of state institutions of higher learning to pick 3 institutions under its umbrella for closure. Now, if you look at the 8 institutions, they name Ole Miss, Southern Mississippi, Mississippi State. Well, those are 3 of the largest universities in the state. HBCU supporters say this is a roundabout way to shut down 3 of their institutions, such as Mississippi Valley State, Alcorn State, and Jackson State University. Joining us from Jackson, Mississippi, is State Senator Hillman Frazier, a member of the Universities and Colleges Committee in the Mississippi House. All right, glad to have you here. This bill seemed to come out of nowhere.
Well, in fact, we have a bill similar to every session. Since I've been serving, you have members introducing that bill trying to save money, but they talk about closing institutions. In the past, aimed at the Mississippi University of Women, and also Mississippi Valley State University. But over the years, there has not been any appetite on the part of the legislature to close any institution. We need to invest in them as opposed to closing them.
So what is confusing here, as I look at this, is that they name 8 schools. And let's be real clear, and Ole Miss ain't got a chance in hell of being shut down. Mississippi State or Southern Miss.
If you look at that bill, they're going to let the College Board make a determination in terms of what institution will be shut down. They will make a recommendation if they follow that bill. But based on my conversation with the chairperson of the committee and also College Board members, they have no appetite to close institutions. Number one, it's going to be very hard to close Alcorn State University because it's a land-grant institution. It's going to be very hard to close Jackson State because it's an urban university that's growing. You're going to have a trouble trying to close those institutions because they always come together, put together their might to make sure they address their needs. In the past, when they talked about closing, they talked about Mississippi University for Women because they're so close to Mississippi State University. They also talked about merging Mississippi Valley State University with Delta State University. They're so close together in the Delta. But in terms of political will, I don't think you're going to have the votes to, I know you're going to have votes on my committee to advance that proposal at all. But in the past, some of the members have introduced legislation saying it's going to save the state money because we can't afford it. But we have surplus money. We have a surplus. We can invest that money in those institutions. But in terms of closure, I don't see that happening at all this term at all because it's just not politically wise to do that. We're trying to invest in those institutions, trying to attract industry. And you can invest in industry by closing down an institution that's going to train the workers. So that won't fly at all this session of the legislature.
And not only that, I mean, look, when Haley Barbour was a governor of Mississippi, he floated this idea, got lots of pushback, and Mississippi was sued. And they had to, it was a massive win for the HBCUs because they were being grossly underfunded. We also, of course, recognize where the federal government has said that a lot of these states have been underfunding HBCUs across the country.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. In fact, the Mississippi was suing. We had to give our Alcorn Valley and Jackson State $500 million to make up for the past seasons of the legislature. And we are also trying to continue those funding. But the dent in this bill, if you look at it closely, is going to allow the College Board to make a recommendation to the legislature in terms of closure. And if they close the institution, they will allow that property to be sold to a nonprofit or a state agency. But over the years, I've been hearing whisper about Ole Miss wanting to become a private institution. So this bill will give them that pathway to become a private institution, to get from under some of the restrictions of the state of Mississippi. So the real focus of this bill might be Ole Miss as opposed to Alcorn Valley and Jackson State.
All right, then. Well, look, certainly keep us abreast. This certainly, shocked a lot of people, led to a lot of consternation on social media. And as I keep saying, when it comes to Republicans in Mississippi, you never know something is dead until it's really dead.
You can't sleep over here because I try to be the first one and the last one to leave because anytime you're in session, they're up to something. I want to make sure that I'm on top of what's going on in this body. But in terms of this bill, I'm on top of it. I'm going to make sure that it don't see the light of day. I talked to the chairperson of the committee. She's against it. I talked to other members of the committee, and they're against it. And also, there's no appetite to close in its institution. We're trying to go forward. We're trying to be backwards in this state. And that's what we're going to do.
All right, Senator Frazier, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
But thanks for having us. Thank you.
Now, our panel, Rebecca Carruthers, Vice President, Fair Election Center out of D.C. Erica Savage, founder and host of the Refrain Brain podcast, also out of D.C. Glad to have both of you here. I mean, look, Rebecca, the thing that I just said there, we have to be extremely careful. What we are seeing from Republicans across this country, Mississippi, Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, Arkansas, Washington State, Iowa. I mean, I don't care what we're talking about. That is targeting HBCUs, targeting voting rights, targeting civil rights. And so we got to stay on constant alert all across this nation.
You know what, Roland, you're absolutely right. We're seeing one particular political party. We see a particular ideology that is hell-bent on making sure that people of color, that Black folks in this case specifically, aren't able to vote, or even to make sure that that our institutions are being shut down. As we know how important Alcorn State is, Jackson State is, and Mississippi Valley State is for Black folks in Mississippi. But here's the thing that I also want to caution viewers is that this might be the banana in the tailpipe, because one of the other things that's before the Education Committee right now is changing up the formula for K through 12 public schools in Mississippi, which could pass and will have very disastrous results for Black students attending public schools in Mississippi. So while I think it is alarming that the three of the HBCUs in Mississippi are included in this proposed bill, I just want to warn viewers that there's actually something worse that's coming that could very much pass the Mississippi legislature.
You know, Erica, I was, it's so funny. This little loudmouth on YouTube, I call her bad lace front hairstyle, did a video talking about me and others like D.L. Hughley meeting with Vice President Kamala Harris. And I had to call this fool out because I said, well, it wasn't a private meeting considering I posted photos of the dinner. And so I go on this fool's Instagram page, and all of these people running their mouths on there talking about we not going to vote, you ain't nothing but a shield, trying to get us to support Democrats. And I'm sitting here going, okay, so you don't see what's going on. Here you got Republicans in Mississippi. They ain't shutting down Ole Miss, Mississippi State, or Southern Miss. So if you got 8, those 3 come off. It's 5 left. So we got to be diligent to understand it's targeting HBCUs. This is the same state that would not fund the water issue in Jackson, Mississippi. This is the same state where the governor openly said when he was the state treasurer, he purposely ignored requests from Jackson, Mississippi. Then again, we talk about what's happening, Republicans are doing in Alabama, in Florida, in Georgia, in Tennessee, in Texas, in North Carolina, in South Carolina, in Iowa, in Maine, in Idaho, in Washington State, in Oregon, all over. If you are Black and you are talking about, oh, I'm not voting, oh, I don't know why you sitting here talking about Democrats, you got to be a damn fool to be blind on what we see as a massive, whole-scale national attack on Black people.
Yeah, Roland, there's really no better way to describe it. And I just want to say over the past weekend, I was at a totally separate conference at the Gaylord that was focusing on global health and wellness. And in that same facility, as we all know, was the CPAC conference. And I bring that forward to say that they are, if nothing, dogged about rolling back the rights of Black people, which also, a part of that legislation also provided that people that are not from this country be able to come in and prosper additionally. So, you know, in thinking about CPAC, I always go back to what Steve Bannon said in 2017 from the stage of that conference after the son of a Klansman had been made president, which was that the focus of their administration or their regime was to deconstruct the administrative state. And a part of that was already at work because of disinformation campaigns that are active and they're growing every day. If anyone does not see the threat to democracy that is happening every day and that is broadcasted across social media and has made a decision that they are not going to vote, they're actually in line with GOP, particularly when we think about what's happening at a state level, that on a federal level, particularly in the House of Representatives, that their counterparts are really showing them the way. So, you know, when we think about having freedom, being able to go on social media at will, where we're seeing different sites that are closing out for several hours or a complete day, you're seeing ads that are coming through the feeds that weren't otherwise there. You're seeing people who continually ensure that your experience on social media is filled with some type of right-wing, Nazi-type propaganda, that who are the people that are holding these reins and what are they doing with their power? So I would go back to some of the commentary that has been happening on Roland Martin Unfiltered for several years, and that is with, on one note of music, to say that what the Grand Ole Party is doing is ensuring that the rights of everybody that is not white and that is not male kneel to the knee of them. And that should be enough for anybody to ensure that they are not only registered to vote, go on their Secretary of State's website to do so right now immediately, but also have your voting plan in place to vote early and be done with it.
See, Rebecca, this is real simple. I've never identified as a Democrat, and I know how to step back and assess individuals, how to assess parties, but I can say without a doubt that if you are Black and hell, if you're a woman and you're sitting here looking at policies nationwide, and we can go state by state, that there's an absolute attack on Black people. And so if you are Black and you're sitting here talking about sitting out the election, and I hear these people, no tangibles, no vote. Well, first of all, no one can give you anything during the election. They got to get elected to actually make some stuff happen. Okay, they can make promises, but they actually have to deliver. But when you see folks attacking white conservatives, Republicans, attacking the Fearless Fund for providing grants, 10 or 20 grand to Black female-owned businesses and other businesses, when you see them attacking affirmative action, when you see all of this, and you talking about sitting an election out, you got to be a total dumbass to do that. And I'll say this right now. If that's you, shut the hell up about anything on the local, state, and national level, because if you do not vote and you sit an election out, you're part of the problem, and you can't say a damn thing about anything because you didn't help to fix it.
You know, Roland, this is we're starting to get into kitchen table talk, and I think it's about time that we actually have this conversation. When people talk about tangibles, some of those people who are talking about it are similar to myself, descendants of Africans who were enslaved in America. I am on both sides. And let me tell you something. When people want to talk about sitting an election out, guess what? You did. That's why we're in the situation that we're in. There are plenty of state and local elections that Black folks, unfortunately, do not vote at the same rate as they do in presidential elections. So when we're talking about what's going on in Mississippi, and later on when we talk about what's going on in Washington State, those are state and local offices that people should run for, that people should vote in those elections. Oftentimes, they're not in federal election years. They're not in 2022, 2024, 2026, 2028. Instead, they're in 2023. So one of the questions I have for some of these folks, where were you in 2023? Is that when you sat out an election? Is that when you allowed for for certain legislators to get reelected? Is that when you allowed for certain judges to be reappointed? Judges who are now doing very anti-Black rulings from the bench, legislatures that are doing very anti-Black legislation from state houses. That's the conversation that we need to have. And we can even bring it much lower. We could talk about school board races. Is that the race that you sat out in protest? That now in your very Black area, you don't have Black representatives, which means now the education of our children, especially in K through 12 public schools across the country, the curriculum is being decided by people who want to say that Black folks in this country were volunteers, or they were just low-skilled labor. They weren't slaves. They were happy to be there because by them being ripped away from Africa, in turn, that meant that these Black people now were able to get white Jesus. So for all those folks who want to have a conversation, let's follow through that line of what happens when we don't show up to the ballot box. And that's what we're seeing now. The second point I have, if you're going to sit out an election, why would you do it during the presidential? Where was all this talk in the non-presidential years? So I find it very interesting that you have some folks who are claiming to be pro-Black, to be Black American, but they hide behind avatars. They hide behind non-picture images of themselves, or they are in digital blackface, trying to stir up trouble within Black communities when it's time to vote for the president. So I think it's very convenient to say, oh, well, let's sit out in 2024 when this is going to be the most consequential election that we've seen to date.
Well, Erica, and I really love the not so bright people. So somebody goes by Black males on YouTube. You will never hear this show talk about policy for Black men, just women. Erica, just correct me if I'm wrong. If we are discussing the Affordable Care Act and its impact on Black health care, does that include Black men?
Yes. And it would include Black girls and Black boys.
If we're having a conversation about education and policy and funding for HBCUs and for K through 12, does that include Black men and Black boys?
Certainly.
If we're having a conversation about the lack of venture capital going to Black-owned businesses, does that include Black male entrepreneurs and Black female entrepreneurs?
100%. Yeah.
In fact, Erica, if we're having a conversation about Black maternal health care, doesn't that impact Black men? Because if it's their wives, mamas, nieces, daughters, cousins having the baby, and if those Black women are having Black male babies, does that impact Black men?
1,000%.
So you see why some of these Black men who love to whine and complain sound stupid when they say, well, you're not talking about stuff that we care about or impacts us. Every single thing that we talk about on this show impacts Black men and Black women. You got to be a really dumb Black man not to understand that.
Your words, not mine, Roland. But, the last point that you made around maternal health, we were making the point at the same time that these are systemic issues that impact the Black community and really global health as well. And so to also, when we hear those types or read those types of comments, I'm immediately thinking about troll farms. And if that is an actual facing person, then thinking more about something that I've talked about around diet. What are you listening to? A lot of times where people are getting their information, snips of information, are from their favorite podcaster who may have been a celebrity or may have been in some type of industry that afforded them some type of celebrity. And what they're actually doing is they're pretty much being the comment head with a microphone, so to speak. And so, questioning where people actually are getting their information from, what are they reading, who are they listening to? Those are the types of things that are really important, because that sounds like a point that was parroted from somebody who was misinformed. And unfortunately, we know that misinformation travels much faster, casts a much wider net than the actual truth does. What we're actually experiencing right now, a lot of people are really, really tired of hearing that this is the most consequential election. They're tired of hearing the positives that they don't believe that impact them. And I can understand that. However, in looking at all of that, then looking at the things that have been positively impacted by having a competent president, a competent vice president, and an administration that has really gone about the business of cleaning up a mess of many, many years, and then also making themselves available in terms of the policy, sharing what they're doing in the administration. And so those are things that we did not experience 4 years ago. So I think that in terms of people that completely share what is popular on social media, that really speaks to what people's diets are. And if people don't see by now that really elections are not about celebrity, elections are about protecting what you work for.
Well, I'm going to say right now, what we're dealing with are a lot of people who spend their time listening to fools. And I'm going to say it right now. If you are listening to any podcast or any show or anybody in your circle, and they are saying, man, that voting don't do nothing, don't accomplish nothing, stay at home, immediately turn, because you are listening to a fool.